Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Monday Night Facebook Live. It is great to be here, as always, and share amazing information with you. My name is Laura Betts. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, I am founder and facility director of Hyperbaric RX down here in South Florida. We are a holistic hyperbaric center specializing in natural health. And one of our areas of expertise is we are an ANDI Certified Hyperbaric Facility. And hyperbaric oxygen therapy is amazing. It is able to do so many things. I've done tons of videos on this. I'm going to keep doing videos on this. Last week, I did a topic on what do you do during a hyperbaric session. And that makes a nice segue into the topic that we are talking about tonight. So last week, and again, you can check out our videos under the video sections on our Facebook page. Again, we have a lot of different topics there that we're able to share with you. So you've probably heard us mention more than once that we are an ANDI Certified Hyperbaric Facility. And it is a extensive voluntary accreditation. Believe it or not, while there are lots of hyperbaric regulations, most of them are not enforced. And the good news is the reason why they're not enforcing them is because it's very hard to hurt somebody with a hyperbaric chamber. In the ANDI organization, we have a 34-year perfect safety record in over 60 countries. So the ANDI standards have well established that we can do different types of scuba diving, different types of technical mixed gas diving, safe air nitrox, as well as safe operations in a gas blending system in a diving center, and safe operations in a hyperbaric facility. So again, perfect safety record. Never been an incident, never been an accident in an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility. And that should mean an awful lot, because while the good news is that the incidents are rare, the bad news is that more of them are happening. And when they do happen, they're catastrophic. Oxygen's got its own set of rules. It's got its own pathophysiology. So tonight's deep dive is talking about, can I take my cell phone into a hyperbaric chamber? And the simple answer is no. No phones, no electronic devices allowed inside of hyperbaric chambers. If you can see behind me, over here, if you can see behind me in the upper corner, you'll see this list of safety considerations. And the safety considerations, the chamber operators, as well as the facility operations in general, are taking those things into account. In hyperbaric medicine, the only thing you can do is prevent the incident. And we've got a really good history of doing that. US Navy, British Royal Navy, Israeli Navy, never been an incident, never been an accident, never been a fire, never been an oxygen fire. So the good news is that we've got a long history, many, many years, a few hundred years, in fact, on oxygen safety. And we've got a set of rules, and we know that these rules work every time. And all we need to do is follow the rules. Now, the thing with these rules is they're specific. Oxygen's got its own set of rules. So if somebody hasn't received training, if someone is not an ANDI certified chamber operator, they don't even know that there are questions that they should be asking. They don't even know that there are considerations that they should be concerned about. Now, again, you can't bring your cell phone inside a hyperbaric chamber, but that's okay. Here at Hyperbaric RX, we've got state-of-the-art streaming services. So you can listen to music, you can listen to pictures that go along with it on the screen. We have some people, for example, that are doing these walking tours. They're very, very cool. You can watch your current television show. You can binge watch a movie. The hardest part of the whole thing, like I talked about last week, was figuring out what to watch on TV. Now, there's a few reasons why you can't bring your cell phone inside the chamber in addition to fire considerations, and I'll talk about that as we get a little further on, so hang in there. I'm going to give you some really neat data. But One point that I want to make, so this whole idea, there's an interesting thing that's going on in the industry right now. And the argument is, well, we're not using oxygen, or we're not filling the chamber with oxygen. We're not pressurizing the chamber with oxygen. So all of those safety considerations and all of those rules that are listed in the National Fire Protection Association Code and all of these procedures that are followed in commercial diving and all of these procedures that are followed in military and technical diving, those don't apply because we're not using oxygen. We're not filling the chamber with oxygen. We're using air. Well, that's actually erroneous. The safety protocol that we are referencing here is an air protocol. There's no difference. When you're pressurizing the chamber with oxygen, you even need to be more careful. And it's interesting because in the fire codes, in NFPA 99, there is some distinction between Class A, which is regarded as a multiplace, and Class B, which is generally regarded as a monoplace, pressurizing with oxygen. Now, again, more hyperbaric chambers in the world pressurize with air than oxygen. Filling the chamber with oxygen is actually an exception, and all of these fire rules, all of these safety codes, all of these safety considerations are an air protocol. In fact, there are reported fires, not in an ANDI facility, but there are reported fires in air environments, in air systems, using air compressors, cylinder refill stations, dirty air compressors have caused fires. This is not an oxygen issue. This is a safe operations issue. Now, here's the interesting data. Air, what we're breathing right now, what the most of the chambers are being pressurized with, air only contains 21% oxygen. So your FO2, your fractional equivalent of oxygen, the amount of oxygen you're breathing right now, the amount of oxygen saturated into your tissues right now is 0.21. Well, the safety standards are based on US Navy research that determined that human tissue burns in an elevated oxygen environment of 28% at a pressure of 2 ATA. 28%. Air contains 21%. And this is where the operational protocol of the amount of oxygen inside the chamber to never exceed 23.5% came from. So they said, okay, human tissue burns at 28%. Remember, the air that we're breathing right now has 21% in it. And of course, in this scenario, they backed the safety standard down to 23% with the maximum threshold of 25%. So what does that mean in English? That means, for example, in a multi-place chamber operation, if the environment of the chamber reaches an oxygen percentage over 25%, once it starts to climb above 23.5, then that multi-place chamber operator is venting the chamber and making changes to adjust that FO2. The standard is an air standard. It's not an oxygen standard. And most chambers pressurize with air. In fact, America is one of the few places in the world where there's an exception, and you don't see that exception too often outside of a hospital. And that, by the way, had to deal with how some of the chambers came to market. And instead of needing this big services skid, the monoplace chamber came to market that could just be filled with oxygen. And the hospitals have plenty of oxygen. They already have big bulk oxygen installations, so it was acceptable. But what was implemented in the 70s, in some ways, it became a little fixed, and it's created some misinformation. Now, in an air environment, the person needs to use some kind of built-in breathing system. And this doesn't matter what type of chamber, it's just the way it works. If you're not breathing the increased partial pressure of oxygen, you're not doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And air itself contains very little oxygen, 0.21, 21%, and it contains an awful lot of nitrogen. Now, the safety considerations, the other concern in hyperbaric chamber safety, there's a few different things that the chamber operator has been trained to manage that the facility is operating at. This is part of what allows us to have this level of safety. And essentially, the chamber operator is making sure that we're not providing fuel unnecessarily, and that we're not providing an ignition source. And that's another problem with cell phones. Cell phones contain battery contacts. Cell phones contain electronic circuitry, and that electronic circuitry is capable of making a spark. The spark is what would provide the ignition source for the fire. In an oxygen reaction, you need the spark. Without the ignition source, we don't have the fire, we don't have the explosion. This is part of how we prevent it. One of the other problems with cell phones is there may be reliability issues of the device. Is the device rated for pressure? Do we want to put our safety, do we want to take all of these unnecessary risks on faith that the person at the cell phone assembly line did their job that day? Now, batteries inside cell phones contain flammable materials. They contain flammable, explosive chemicals. And oxygen itself is not flammable. It does, however, lower the ignition temperature of everything, meaning it makes things more likely to burn, more likely to catch on fire. It doesn't take the same amount of heat. So adding flammable chemicals and a potential ignition source to an environment where a fire is more likely is really not ideal. There are documented cases of cell phones failing in air environments. Look it up. You're not supposed to be talking on your cell phone when you're pumping gas. The cell phone can provide an ignition source for the gasoline fumes, and there are fires that have been reported and cause a lot of damage. In addition, we've had battery failures. The batteries have actually popped, the batteries have actually exploded. And when the battery does that, it releases all of these chemicals. And in this case, if this were to happen inside the hyperbaric chamber, well, that would really be problematic, because now we are in a contained pressure vessel with whatever chemicals and gases are now coming out of that phone. I mean, this is a lot of risk. And what's the reward? Well, I want to talk on my phone during the session. Well, that's unfortunate. We don't want to be doing that either. Well, why not? Because when we talk, when we speak, when we exhale, we are exhaling another gas. That gas is carbon dioxide. And in a built-in breathing system, if we're talking and we're clamoring about, we can actually cause a buildup of carbon dioxide. For scuba divers, as an example, carbon dioxide buildup, making sure that there isn't breathing resistance in the regulator, in the gas delivery device, in the loop, depending on what type of equipment they're using. Carbon dioxide buildup can cause the scuba diver to pass out. That's not a great thing to have happen when you're swimming around in the water. Now, in the hyperbaric chamber, it's not as much of a concern. But if you remember Dalton's law of partial pressure from my ANDI Certified Chamber Operators that are catching this on the replay, the sum of the whole is equal to the parts. So if we're building up carbon dioxide, we're dropping the partial pressure of other gases. And in the case of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we're dropping the partial pressure of oxygen. So we're affecting the dosage. So building up this reactive gas, building up this gas that is a reactive catalyst for our oxygen mechanisms, this is not really ideal. Now, some of this comes out of phone addiction. I have had the firsthand experience when someone comes in and we have to tell them that they can't bring their phone inside the chamber. I've seen the sheer panic in their eyes. There is a bit of device addiction that's going on right now. In some cases, it can be really challenging. We have had situations with kids that are really dependent on their device. And the hardest part of the whole hyperbaric session is holding their attention with the television, with the movie, with the cartoon, because they can't bring their device inside the chamber. And again, there's just so many risks there. And yeah, it's really uncommon. Now, I have to change this number because when I first started doing this, if you go back to some of the early ANDI Hyperbaric Chamber Operator courses, I'm using a number of under 75. And I'm saying that in the history of hyperbaric medicine, there's been less than 75 combustion incidents in the entire world. And that's over quite an extended period of time. That's really impressive. But that number is now coming up on 86. So we are having more. And this is all happening out of ignorance. This is all happening out of a lack of education. And unfortunately, because it has the potential, there is no such thing as a little oxygen fire. The only thing you can do is prevent it. When it does happen, it is a mass explosion and it's catastrophic. And in the past, when this has happened, on the few occasions that it has happened, it results in loss of life. So we take that really, really seriously. Why do we want to roll the dice, even if it's pretty rare? There's lots of factors in an oxygen reaction. And each time the chamber operator allows an additional factor into the system, into the chamber operations, it's adding risk. And eventually, you run out of opportunities to make mistakes. Eventually, you've had too many factors come together, and essentially now, catastrophic loss of life. Now, this is rare. This is really rare. That's the good news. And one of the arguments that we get from time to time is, oh, but I've done it so many times before and I've never had a problem. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because you wouldn't be there telling me about it if you had. It's a really, really big deal. And this isn't to create any fear. Again, we've got a long, well-established history of rules that work every time, all the time. So let's just follow the rules and not worry about it. I don't like the stress of worrying, is this okay to bring inside the system? How about let's just make sure that we have an amazing, safe dive? And that's one of the many, many differences of diving at an ANDI Certified Hyperbaric Facility, choosing to be an ANDI facility, having your dive supervised by ANDI Certified Chamber Operators. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes into it. You can see that safety consideration list is pretty long. So cell phones are really problematic, and it's ultimately a poor practice. And one of the other points that I want to make, and this is for my ANDI professionals, this is for my chamber operators and my ANDI certified hyperbaric facilities. Hyperbaric is held to a very, very unfair standard. There isn't a single piece of fire code. There isn't a single commercial practice. There isn't an OSHA manual. There isn't a document that says it's okay to do any of these things. In fact, you'd be challenged to find an engineer that would be okay with the practice. So the problem is that not only is it an unnecessary risk, it puts the site in a position where they're operating in a manner that's not legally defensible. So when you see protocol violations, it becomes a red flag. Hyperbaric's held to a really unfair standard to begin with. And I'll give you a real example. So one of the things that I do in the ANDI organization is we help support other facilities. And a facility had a situation where somebody fell. They tripped and fell. This had nothing to do with hyperbaric applications. This had nothing to do with the safety of the site. They tripped and they fell. However, because paramedics had to be called, the entire facility came under scrutiny. All of their operations, their oxygen systems, it made a whole big deal. Had nothing to do with anything. And that's what tends to happen. Something unrelated causes, and then all of the practices come under play. If you're a consumer that's listening to this, if they're letting you bring your cell phone inside the chamber, it means that they're not trained. It means that they're not certified, and it probably means that they don't have any insurance. So if you're choosing a site, I would encourage you to use that as a marker and select an ANDI Certified Hyperbaric Facility, or at least one that's following basic fire safety protocols. We've got a long, well-established history of safety. And again, this isn't an oxygen issue. Most hyperbaric chambers in the world fill with air. The safety standard is based on an air environment. Oxygen environment poses even more concerns. Class A versus Class B, even more concerns. So I hope this information was helpful. And again, each week we try to share some data and give you some good topics to choose from. And give you some education about it. So last week, again, we did some really neat topics, and you can check out our videos under the section. Again, we do Facebook Lives every Monday at 6 o'clock. So Hyperbarics RX, by the way, we are an ANDI Certified Hyperbaric Facility. I think I've certainly emphasized that, and there really is an ANDI difference. And I encourage you to come on out and have a wonderful session with us, whether you're moving through a complex case, whether you have an immune disorder, whether you're looking for performance enhancement or anti-aging. We have all of the different protocols. In addition to the standard protocols, we have all of the international indications, including the anti-aging and biohacking protocols. We're also very unique. We are the only holistic hyperbaric center of its kind in the world. So not only do we offer hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but we use state-of-the-art analysis, including DNA testing, to give you information to help rebalance your health naturally. So we'd love to share that data with you, as well as many of the different things that we offer. So I hope this topic was interesting. Again, check it out. Check out some of our other videos under the repeat. And as always, it's been amazing sharing data with you. If you want to give us a call, if you've got some questions, if you're interested in being an ANDI facility, please reach out to me. My number is 954-749-9998. And again, we're located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but we service people all over the world. We do telehealth, and we'd love to help you. So again, Laura Betts, great to see everybody. This has been your Oxygen Lady, and thanks so much. I'll see you next Monday.